We're here at the CCA Workbench, and it's time for the Academy Sports and Outdoors Rigs and Technique. And Dave, all of this stuff we can find at Academy.
Yes.
But what are we going to be doing with the rigs this week?
Well, you know, we're talking a little bit about trout. He's one of the most sought-after game fish in Florida. You know, they're good to eat for, you know, once they get to a certain size, and people love to catch them. They're easy to catch. They're easily fooled by artificial baits, which is, you know, a great thing for us. And usually once you find them, you can catch quite a few of them. You know, they like to school up in certain areas, but you know, their main diet is small crustaceans, small fish, just about anything that comes by in the current. You know, they like to ambush. They're an ambush feeder. They live down in the grass. They eat little pinfish, croakers, anything that lives in the grass. Shrimps is one of their frame, and the shrimp is one of those as well. But a 16-inch trout can eat a huge bait. It's weird how much their belly. You know, he's a longer fish, and his belly takes up a lot of space. And so you can catch an 18-inch trout on a freaking 10-inch mullet. I mean, they will eat a big bait sometimes. Most of the time, we don't worry about that. We try to use smaller stuff. Now, we were talking earlier about the topwater plugs. We'll start there, I reckon. I love to, you know, wade fish and work topwater baits. This is a topwater bait that is more of the Choppo is more of a bait that doesn't stop moving. You know, you just reel it, which is great for a spinning rod. You know, and then you got to walk the dog type bait,
the jaywalker.
You can walk the bait, you know, walk the dog with it, and as long as you keep it moving, it's pretty good too. If you're using a chug style of a topwater plug, though, you might want to use a Baitcaster, because when you're doing all that chugging and reeling in slack line, if you're using a spinning reel, a lot of times you can wrap over the spool a lot of times, and you don't even notice it. But it can happen to you a lot when you're using
really good advice. When
you're using lures that you pop and then reel slack. Even other, it doesn't even have to be a topwater plug, but if you're moving something really hard and then reeling up a lot of loose line, just pay real close attention when you do that. Otherwise, use a Baitcaster. A Baitcaster is perfect for all that topwater stuff, especially the chugging and all that.
Now, what if you're not fishing on the top, Dave? You want to fish subsurface?
Well, you know, I love anything with a jig head. You know, a soft bait with a jig head on it, a paddle tail. You know, it's a search bait more than anything. You know, when you don't know where the fish are, that jig head is really great. And a weighted swim bait is really great, because you can make long casts with those weighted lures versus a non-weighted. And when you make those long casts with a 7-foot rod, you can cover a lot of ground. Now, if you know where the fish are, you don't need the weight. You can just use a weightless. You know, a weedless swim bait with no weight on it. Yeah. And that's if you're fishing in a place where you know the fish know you're there, it's really, really shallow. If you throw a big jig in there and it hits the water with a lot of force, it can spook them away. But, you know, that little light bait hitting the water doesn't mess with them nearly as much. You know, and the popping cork is a great bait, especially, you know, with a jig head and a soft plastic on it. This is the best of both worlds, because you got the Fight Club, the Fish Bites Fight Club, which is like a soft plastic, but a bait with a bait at the same time, because they will be drawn to that just as they would with a shrimp, except that stays on a lot better than a shrimp. So when you're popping that, you know, cork, you know, that'll stay on there a lot better than a shrimp will.
Tell everybody the trick with popping corks and braided line.
Oh, well, I was telling you, whenever I use a lot of popping corks when I fish shiners and stuff for bass, and I realized, because all my rods have braided line on them, when you tie braided line to one of these popping corks, because braided line is so limp, it wraps all up in here.
Around all this hardware.
All that hardware. So what I do is I put a good 10 or 15-inch piece of mono, and then maybe a swivel, or I tie directly to my braid, so that it keeps my braid away from that when you're popping it.
Dave, every week.
Just tantalizing.
My man is on fire. I have 9 weeks of fire here.